Fáilte Nash Grí Shrahadó de Comhrá Le Tomás, I gcór le EIRGRID. Be mésaí le daoine cáiliúil ón Cumann Lú Clascail agus tá súlagam go mbeidh sibh tainneamh.
I remember saying to him, "This is some trip, Sean Murray. This is unbelievable." He says, "It's not a trip, Muggsy. It's a tour." And I was like, "No, but you know what I mean." He says, "No, I don't."
So proud there again, D&G. Who're there again, D&G. Dalshin Cabana. Yeah, to LNG anyway. Larry and Galvin anyway. That's the brand name anyway.
This season, the show is brought to you by EIRGRID. They're the proud sponsors of the Under-20 All-Ireland Football Championship. Not only is EIRGRID delivering a cleaner energy future for Ireland, they are invested in development of our most promising GAA players and the managers that help them to shine. Fáilte Nash, lads, for another episode of Comhrá Le Tomás. Delighted to be joined by Frankie Dolan this week of St.Brigids and Roscommon. And brilliant to have you, Frankie, in association with EIRGRID. You're welcome to Comhrá Le Tomás. How are things? Are you enjoying the summer? You're enjoying the good weather? You were in Donegal the last few days, were you?
Thanks, Tomás. Yeah, great to be on. Great to see you and great to chat to you. Yeah, I was up in Bundoran for a few days with the McAniffs, so we got well looked after, and you know the weather was beautiful up there. Brian McAniff is still talking about football. He's well into his 70s, and he's just stole mad into football. He could be the next Donegal manager. You wouldn't know.
He's been Donegal manager so often. I remember going up there in the early days, and he was the manager. He's Mr. Donegal himself, Michael Murphy. How are they taking the defeat? Are they taking it badly? Are they disappointed?
They are very disappointed, yeah. They were expecting to get a little bit of a run going this year, and especially after getting beaten last year by Cavan. So they are very disappointed up there. But I suppose the McAniffs are originally sort of Tyrone people as well, so they're not overly bad, you know. But the mood in Bundoran itself, you know, the few people I know up there, you know, it's not good. But you know, life goes on. The weather is good, so I'm sure they'll get over it.
What was I going to say? The championship in general, Frankie, I know a lot of people are giving out that there was a lot of one-sided games the day early on, but it'll probably end up that we have a better kind of balance. Already we're seeing it in Ulster, we'll see it in Connacht, we'll see it in the semi-finals. What's your overall view of the championship? Are you enjoying it? Is it just different? What's your take on it so far?
I'll be honest with you, Tomás, I haven't watched a lot of it. I went to the Roscommon Galway game there a couple of weeks ago, and listen, the weather was horrendous, and the football was probably as bad as the weather. You know, it didn't suit for probably good football. So that's the only game I've been at. I've seen bits and pieces of highlights of matches. I find it hard to sit down and watch a full Gaelic match now. The last year or two is just I just can't really watch it. I'd watch the likes of Dublin, Kerry, you know, Mayo to an extent, but you know, other than that, I find it very hard. I don't know, maybe it's the way the soccer started off over in England, I suppose, there last year with no crowds and the atmosphere not there. And I think that it's got into my head now that the atmosphere last year, there was no atmosphere at the Gaelic matches. And I think that's played into, you know, the quality and the overall last year, especially, you know, the bit of bite, the bit of intensity, the rivalry, you know, and this year has been a little bit better that way, but, you know, overall quality, I find it very hard to watch Gaelic football now.
Is that with the style, Frankie? Like the style of football, the way it's being played? Like, are we over-analysing it? Are we overthinking it? Are we overcomplicating it? Like, I know you're involved in management at club level, and I'm involved in management at club level, and it's even coming into that as well. Like, and you have different tactics and different strategies, and the players are almost expecting you to have these, I don't know, is it tactical meetings and is it gone too far in all levels?
It is, yeah. There's no doubt about it, Tomás. Like you hear of counties having tactical meetings and video analysis going on a full day, like a full day from morning to evening, you know, and I don't know. I think it's way, way over the top. I think players are probably nearly afraid to make a mistake, nearly afraid to try something. You know, and even at club level, I see it there. I'm with a junior club in Offaly, and there's some of the lads coming up that nearly expect you to play the game for them. You know, as I keep saying to them, lads, every attack is different. Every defence is different. Go out and play the game. Use your head. Whatever happens. You got to adapt to it on the pitch. You know, start using your brains. And, you know, go out and try and enjoy the game. Every time something happens, you see them looking to the sideline. What are we going to do if a team gets a score? Why did they get a score? Why did this happen? It's just crept into it. I just think it's gone way, way, way over the top. And Tomás, I'm doing it differently this year. I'm doing very little of the video analysis meetings, keeping it very simple as possible, game plan as simple as possible, and go out and play the game and enjoy it. Like you played the game at a good time, no more than myself, and you want to look back in years to come and say, geez, I enjoyed that, instead of being bombarded with analysis and this and that, and you give away the ball here, and why didn't you give it there, and why didn't you move here for the kick out, all that type of stuff. My head is just fried with all that. I be old school in a way, you know what I mean? But it's just very hard at the moment with club football.
Some people think that old school is bad, and there's a lot of new things that have come in and it's grand. But if you go back to the old school, Frankie, and when I talk old school, I'm talking about, I'm involved in management now. A lot of the things that the managers did back in the day in terms of bringing the group together and bonding them, I find at the moment we're involved in a group, and you do as much as you can on the pitch, but you want to bring them together in a certain way off the pitch, or bond the older lads with the younger lads. It's very, very hard in the COVID at the moment to do anything, even to bring them to the beach. You'll have a gang giving out that there's a big group. Are you struggling with that at the moment, or do you enjoy management as such in general, but at the moment then do you find it completely different to the way you'd want to do things properly?
Yeah, you're right. I had the boys at the beach there a few weeks ago in Bundoran, and they loved it. It was totally old school with a guy that was with me with St.Brigids for a few years, an S&C coach. He's in the army, and what them boys are like for a session. But the lads loved it. At the start, it was very hard, but they got into it, and it brought them together. You can actually see it bringing lads together, getting them talking, getting them working, encouraging each other. That type of thing. Go for a bit of lunch after, bit of grub, few pints, stay the night, and to me, that's one way of sort of getting a group together, getting to know lads. I got to know a few of the younger lads in particular after a few beers, they start opening up naturally enough. And you get a feel for them. Like you go to a training pitch, Tomás, a lot of young lads in particular are very quiet. And it's very hard to get into their heads. What they're thinking, how they are in life in general. Are they enjoying football? Are they all right with work or college? You know what I mean? And I got to know stuff that I probably shouldn't have got to to know in Bundoran a few weeks ago. But it all worked out well, and you can see the group is a lot tighter after it, Tomás. They really enjoyed the weekend away.
I always found that when fellas you'd be playing with, very, very quiet lads, that you'd actually, they wouldn't say much, and in fact they'd say nothing at all. Mike McCarthy was the type of a lad that would never ever open his mouth inside in a team meeting, on the pitch, went about his business as usual, but got a few points into him. And the strange thing, Frankie, Mike could make a point on a night out and he'd say something about the way we were playing and what you're doing as a wing back outside him. And you'd say, Jesus Christ, why didn't you just tell me that inside in the dressing room? Like, outstanding stuff. But the lads that are quieter and shyer would come out when they have a few jars on board, or in there if they're comfortable inside in a situation, and they'd be funny all when you don't expect a quiet fella to come out. That's the fella that'll come out and surprise you. And so, as you said, probably say too much at times as well. Like,
yeah. You have to remind me of something there. The brother Garvin. We were having a team meeting with Bridges there a few years ago, and Garvin was up in the local pub up in Daly's having a few refreshments,
Yeah.
And he missed the training, but he came down. We got him down to the team meeting, and Karen Mannion, they used to play midfield for Bridges and Roscommon, and Garvin came in, and we knew he was well oiled, but he'd never say anything at a meeting. That's the way he was. He'd do all his talking on the pitch, but whatever he said that day, Karen Mannion says it was the best thing he ever heard in a team meeting. He said, Garvin, any more we're having team meetings, have a few pints beforehand, because you're making lots of sense now. It was brilliant.
It is the way to go. Do you enjoy management? What's the hardest thing? And you have been involved in it a while now, because I'd be fierce interested in it from my point. I never looked at it from a manager's viewpoint. Jesus, it's a tough gig, Frankie, in terms of club, in terms of, don't forget intra-county. It's hard. What do you find the toughest part of it?
Well, Tomás, I think inter-county management is probably easier than club. Like, you have everybody to do everything for you. You're designating jobs to probably 10 or 15 in your management team. So you're overseeing all of that. But like, club level is totally different, as you know. The manager has to do everything.
Yeah.
More or less everything, unless you have one or two really good lads with you that they can take a bit of the workload off you. You know, but that's what you need. But club level is you have to organise your. I go back to my time at Bridges. You have to organise refs, pitches, matches, physios, doctors. You're looking after a panel of whatever 30 plus players, and everything else then that goes with it. You know what I mean? Everything else with regarding your tactics, training wise, setting out training with your S&C. You know, it's club level. I just think club, like, I've been involved at under 21 level with the county, and that was a lot easier. I was in there as a coach. You go in there, do your job, you go home, fine. But club level is very difficult, and I feel for managers that are going in there and that have no help. And I know a few lads that have done it the last few years and have sort of stepped away from it because they're expected to run the whole club almost on their own and run a team. And like, you're having 25, 30 lads. It's very hard, Tomás. You need a really good management team with you at club level.
The group you have at the moment, are they hard to manage?
They're not overly hard. You know, you'd have the usual excuses. Half an hour before training, I can't make it for whatever reason. I don't feel well, or I got the COVID jab yesterday and I feel a little low on energy. And, you know, you might have one or two lads milking cows and that old chippy that caught up in a job that he has to get finished. You know what I mean? But overall, they're very committed. You know what I mean? But
do you ever say, don't cut a cutter? I know all the excuses, lads.
I just say, lads, just be straight up, whatever. I says, if you can't make it, just let me know. If you can, whatever. Like, we've the club is very small. You know, it's just outside Athlone, maybe about 10 minutes on the border of Westmeath and Offaly, a little place called Ballinhahound. So it's a very small club. So numbers you're talking 20 to 25. That's sort of your max numbers. They're a junior club. So we'd have the guts of 20 a training every session, which is good, which you need.
Geez, it's always with numbers. I always said when we were going well with Kerry, the club, I don't know how they survived on their own. It was all about the numbers, and they were in an area where, Jesus, summertime was mad, and it was hard to keep them freaking online most of the time. You mentioned there on the border, Frankie, and I always find this fascinating. The Dolans, and I know Desi and all the lads be your cousins over, right? And Gary and the boys. You were, I didn't realise how close you were. Your dad moved, was it, when you were young, and literally moved out the road. But when you think of Roscommon and Westmeath, you think two different counties, separate, whatever. You were still very, very close. Like, he still played soccer, like, with the lads, with your cousins when you were growing up, which he obviously then played. Was there ever a kind of a question of you playing for Westmeath, like, or was it always, when you moved club, that was it?
No, my mother and father would have moved to the Roscommon side, near enough to Hudson Bay Hotel, Tomás. You'd know it yourself fairly well. And like, that's only, it's less than 5 minutes from, it's probably about a 2-minute drive to the border of Westmeath, you could say, into the roundabout at Ganley's, 2 to 3 minutes. So like, they moved out there, all their family would have been originally Westmeath people. So they moved out the road, and like, I was born into the county of Roscommon. So I always classed myself as a Roscommon person, even though I would have went to school in Athlone, played soccer in Athlone, you know, all through the younger years, played soccer with Desi, Gary, you know, socialising at Athlone most of the time, you know. So like, Westmeath would be very close to me at heart as well. You know, I would have probably spent more time in Westmeath than I would in Roscommon, because it's that close in proximity, you know.
There was, I don't know how true it is, but I heard at the time when Paddy went to Westmeath, did he make an awful drive for you?
He did, in fairness to him. It came through Desi. So we won't let him away scot-free. And I met Paddy, and I said it in the book. It was one of the best evenings I ever spent with any GA person. It probably was the best evening. I would have never met Paddy before that.
Background, did he make sure, Frankie, that you had a couple of jars and that you had a relaxing evening, and he didn't pounce you straight away with a question like?
There was no champagne now, Tomás. I was a little bit disappointed, but I think he was on the way to training himself. So we met in Brackens in Kinnegad, and I've never been back there since. I'd love to go back there and sit in the spot that we sat for over an hour, Tomás, and the crack was mighty. And I don't know, Paddy never looked me in the eye. You know, he was always looking this way or that way, and he'd be eating. He must have 30 sandwiches, and you know he was drinking pots of tea and sandwiches, and the crack was mighty. And there was a few boys at the bar, and they were wondering what the fuck is going on here with these lads, you know, because they knew Paddy more than they knew me. But we had a mighty crack, mighty chat, and you know I just went to him and I told him how I felt. Like I wasn't brought back into the Roscommon panel in 2005. I was 27, so. I stepped away from it in 2005 after the second league game. So next thing, the wheels got rolling anyways through Desi and Paddy was the manager at the time, and met him. And, you know, Paddy made it his business to try and get me there. In fairness to him, like I went away from the meeting, you know, in very happy, you know. And, you know, a few days after I started thinking, Jesus, is it a bit too early to join Westmeath? You know, and I started thinking about the supporters and that, and family and friends, and the grief I'd probably get, and the usual shit, you know. And Paddy must have rang me 50 times, Tomás, and I'll be honest with you, I hadn't the balls to pick up the phone to him. Because I knew if I did, I was gone. I was gone to him, and I didn't do it. But you know, it was one evening, you know. I always, you know, if you're out chatting to people and we'll be chatting about Paddy, it's always one story I always tell. You know, it was a brilliant evening I spent on him. Even though it was about an hour, you know, it was great memories with him.
Jesus Christ, I remember as a young fella, if he got his tentacles into you at all, like even for work, and I'd be 12 or 13, and he'd be looking for some fella to pull pints across the road, and just he'd come over. Christ, if the only chance I had was if I saw him coming and in the driveway, I could bolt out the back door down the field, and he wouldn't get a hold of me. Very hard man to say no to. Come here.
Yeah.
Can you remember the first time you went in and we played it in a similar era, right? Can you remember? And I always like comparing, because it isn't a million years ago, Frankie, like it isn't a million years ago since we played or started out. But the difference is, like, can you remember at the start, like, and I'd say club level would probably be ahead of what intercounty was at the time. Was it a big buzz? Who was involved? What year was it? You were obviously freaking elated, like, to be inside with in an intercounty setup.
I was actually brought in '98, Tomás, when Roscommon and Galway. You remember them two games? The first game into a replay, and you know Roscommon probably should have won that game. I'll always say it. The Leitrim referee, I won't name him, but you know he gave Galway a very dubious free on front of goal in Tuam in the last kick of the game. Finnegan tapped it over, and you know, probably John O'Mahony's connection with Leitrim from years previous probably helped in that decision, you know. But, you know, I was training with the lads back then, and Gay Sheeran was the manager. Gay would have played in goal for Roscommon over a number of years. Yeah. And Gay wanted me on the panel, but I didn't want to commit to it. You know, I thought I still had loads of time, and I would have been chatting to my uncle Desi, and he was sort of saying, if you're not sure, he says, hold off to next year. And, you know, I was in there training. I would have trained for them maybe for about 6 or 8 training sessions over the summer, and I loved it. And I was flying it with them. And, you know, I was doing damage at training, a lot of these training games. And I committed to it then in 99. And, you know, it was old school then, Tomás. You know what I mean? It was, Jesus, like you were really only training 3 times a week, you know, and you might do, you know, the gym came into it then maybe in 2001, really. That's when the gym came into it. And Roscommon said it with John Tobin and Des Ryan. Des went on to be with Connacht Rugby, Ireland Rugby, Arsenal Football Club, and that's when the training really ramped up. And lads were sort of seeing a different side to the game. It was sort of changing. Then you were probably training 5 days a week. Well, you'd be gone 5 days a week, you know, and like the
biggest, you talking there and the way you sentence that, like the big change in what football has become and is the analysis side of it, and the days that you have off that you have to fill it up with something. That's the difference, isn't it? Because when we were there at the very start, you did your 3 days on the pitch, and that was basically it. Now you trained hard, probably no different to what they train now. There's not much of a difference in what you ran hard, you did your running, you did your hard football, the tactics, whatever it was that they've changed naturally. But the big difference is the amount of time they spend preparing in terms of analysis and the amount of time they spend getting, now, in fairness, Frankie, Jesus Christ, there's some specimens out in the pitch now. To be fair, they're looking, they're models. Like we weren't like that in our day, but Christ, I wouldn't mind to have a body like them now if I was still playing.
Yeah, they wouldn't be able to play football like you, though, Tomás. A lot of them.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, but like Tomás, you're like there's, the time is the big thing, and I've heard you talking about it before. Like I find it very hard how young lads nowadays, which, you know, and a lot of lads have pulled out of intercounty because they can't commit to time. A lot of really top end footballers, which is such a pity. You know, like video analysis and team meetings going on for hours and hours. I wouldn't be able for Tomás, you know, if it was nowadays, I wouldn't be able to sit there and look at videos for hours and talk about football for hours and hours. You know, it's just, you know, I like to do your train and do your bit of chat after, between exercises, between drills, after a session. You know, you might have a shower, you might go and look at a bit of video analysis for 10, 15 minutes. Loads, plenty. You know, that's the way probably you done it as well, no more than anybody else back 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Nowadays it's mental stuff.
I think it'll come around again, Frankie. I think it'll always be there and they'll do it properly, but they'll find ways of actually doing it properly without spending the time. I think this whole COVID thing has actually hit the nail on the head in terms of we've got a split season. I don't know how that will work. There'll probably be problems in that as well, and we'll continuously be trying to iron it out. But if they could just realise that the amount of time is not necessary. I think we got enough of a championship last year and this year. The quality of the football, we're raving about what we saw up north, and we're raving what we see all over the country in terms of football at the moment. And is there a need of the fucking 6-7 months training before it, or the amount of analysis that they can't do together? I think that's the one positive out of COVID. We'll find ways of not spending as much time, or not needing to spend as much time on it. Can I ask you about the group you had? And I know you're going off golfing with Francie Graham. I met Francie, I was telling you, up in Portrush lately. And to be fair, he's obviously a keen golfer. You had a good group, and you had Nigel Deneen. I remember I watched a goal, the what kind of final was it that you got the last minute goal against Mayo? What year was that?
2001.
2001. You went through 3 or 4 years. Johnny Tobin was in charge that time, wasn't he?
He was, yeah.
You had a right good bunch that time in terms of characters. And when I mean characters, probably characters off the pitch. But when I say on the pitch, fellas that could freaking do it, didn't possibly, Mayo and Galway would have possibly been seen as the mainstays. But Jesus, you rattled them well in those years, Frankie. They were good, the good top years, were they?
Yeah, they were brilliant, Tomás, and like we got to a couple of league semi-finals, and you know what sort of affected us up a bit was our panel wouldn't have been. You would have had a big enough panel, but the quality, say outside your 16, 17, to really get up the levels. You know, we didn't have that overall quality. We had a really tight bunch of, I'd say maybe 10 or 12 players, really, really good top end players. But then, you know, you need a big panel of quality players, and like likes of Galway back then, like they had a serious panel of players. Mayo always have a serious panel of players. You know, Roscommon, then you're always trying to play catch up, Tomás. But like we had a great year that year in 2001, and it's the fucking first time the back door was brought in. Typical our luck, you know. We knocked out Galway, and then bet Mayo, and like Galway came back, and like it was a disaster of a draw for us, a quarter final against Galway down in fucking Castlebar of all places. You know, we've a horrible record there, fucking horrible record. And you know, from the start of the game, and like John Bannon was reffing it, and sure, like he's best buddies with the Galway boys. Sure, everybody knew that back then, you know. And sure, Jesus Christ, some of the decisions. Now it wasn't him that lost the game, but like some of the decisions that went on that day was mind-boggling. You know, he was chatting. He was chatting to the boys with their first name, Decky and Mikey and PJ, and he's like Divo. I was like, fucking hell, like this is fucking mad stuff. You know what I mean? We couldn't get it free.
I shouldn't be laughing. Like a huge match, like a huge match. Do you know, Frankie? I love it. Like I love when you talk about it, and you can hear it in your voice there, isn't it? The parochial stuff, the real, the Mayos for ye and the Galways for ye. It's the Corks for us. Like that's what really gets the juices flowing. Like it brings out the best in us, doesn't it? And it can bring out the worst in us at the same time.
Here, that's part and parcel of it. That's the great thing about GAA. You know what I mean? And like social media has a lot to answer for the last couple of years. Thank God it wasn't out when we were back in our heydays, you know. But like, like I got a bit of stick there a few weeks ago, a lot of stick and a lot of stuff online, messages, private messages. Now, it's a good job I'm a thick-skinned person, because some of the messages that was sent to me was totally off the charts. Yeah, from me old people, you know what I mean? I was having a bit of banter, as we do, like that's the way we are. And, no more than yourself, you throw an odd scud out here and there just for a bit of crack, for a little bit of devilment,
Yeah.
But I'd always respect Mayo, always respect Galway for what they've done on the pitch. Regarding Mayo not winning Sam Maguire since a few years after Roscommon back in the 1950s. But, like, what they've done, over the years, you cannot fault that. You know what I mean? And the same with Galway. And, like, I threw out a scud there about hatred between whatever Roscommon and Mayo, and there is hatred there, Tomás, between sections. Yeah. Like, you go up to Ballahadreen, where Andy Moore reckons he's from, and Andy made a statement. He says, I'm living in Athlone. Like, Andy want to get his facts right. I haven't lived in Athlone in a long time, and Andy'd want to learn where he's from himself first before he starts throwing scuds at me. Do you know what I mean? So, like, we'll always have that bit of crack, and like Tomás, I've been in Croke Park loads of times, and, I've seen lads fighting with each other in the crowd. So if you tell me that's not hatred or that's not whatever rivalry, you'll always have that. And, and that's part and parcel of the GAA. Like, if that dies, that's when the GAA really is in trouble. You have your Cork, your Kerrys, your Dublin, your Meads, your Roscommon Mayo, Roscommon Galway, whatever you want to call it, and the rivalry up the north then is on another level completely than probably down south. So, like, that's part and parcel. It's all a bit of banter, like, and, people take things literally too much nowadays, sit back, relax, and, don't take life so serious. Enjoy it, and embrace a little bit of conflict at times as well.
It's very, very true. You'd always, geez, Frankie, I'd be the exact same as you. I would respect supporters and players and footballers from every county, and you're going to say things at times that piss people off, and you're going to say things. There is awful banter there, there's awful crack there, but at the end of the day, we're all GA people. When we cross the white line, of course you'd want to kill a Cork man or you want to kill a Dublin man. It's not literally kill, but you'd do anything to get over them. And I think it spills into the crowd. But we, over any other sport, tend to leave it after us. And there's a tiny, tiny, tiny percent that can draw it too far. And you're only talking about a tiny percent. Were you a hard group? I saw Shane Curran's, I really enjoyed it. He's a great character. I enjoyed his EIRGRID Gael. And you brought back, and I suppose when you're not inside in the middle of it, I was brought back to when Mahan came and he made a mistake, I suppose, by dropping lads that he should have carried on with him. I think any team, and you see the Dubs even now at the moment, it's those characters that you need to have in the dressing room that set the standards and set the whatever kind of a culture that you have going. Was that something that pissed you off? Because you said it there earlier on, 27 years of age, and was that it in terms of inter-county? You came back after, did you? But that was it. At the time, you were too young at 27, like.
Yeah, that was more or less it, Tomás. 2004, you could say, was my last year playing inter-county at the level required. Like, I started out in 2005, the start of the year. Tommy Carr was Tommy's last year, actually, and like, I came back second fittest in the test, which was remarkable for a player like me, I suppose. Like, I trained like a dog for a few months over the winter, got myself into serious shape, and came back, and I wasn't starting out, be it was against Clare and Carlow. We were playing Division 3 or some shit like that. Like, I wanted to be playing, Tomás. I didn't want to be sitting on the bench.
Yeah.
And I wasn't getting the start, and I was like, fuck this, and I was getting no communication. So that was fine. They named the team then for the Carlow game, and I was like, what's the name again? I said, fuck this, I'm off. I'm gone. I'm not putting up with this shit. No one telling me why I'm not starting. If the management said we're holding you for the championship or some shit like that, that would have done. Give me anything, but no communication was a disaster for me. And I said, lads, I'm out of here. Good luck. The best of luck to you. And one journalist in Roscommon actually says later on that year, I was the first GA player in the history of the GA to get dropped twice in playing county football. And like, that was pure silly stuff as well. You know what I mean? I walked away from the panel in 2005, Tomás. of my own accord, and people here would know that. But it's painting a picture elsewhere around the country saying just that Frankie Dolan's a complete fucking lunatic to deal with. You know what I mean, Tomás?
I know,
like,
yeah.
That's far from the truth.
I was telling a fella that's huge into his football because he loves a crack and all these podcasts. It's a bit of a, you know, like, I don't know when we'll meet again, but it's a kind of a catch up anyway that we'd kind of have. But I said I was interviewing Frankie Dolan, and he says straight away, first words out of his mouth, he says 2003, 2 matches, 25 points, should have got an All-Star. And I wouldn't have a memory like that. But Jesus Christ, I always think like, if you have a fella that can score like that, because anytime we play G, Frankie, or anytime Roscommon, that was the first name. And then when I saw it, 27 years of age, and I said, and I don't want to be going down the bad old days or whatever. I remember we played G in the semi-final in the 21s, and you're I have to go there, like, they were all talking about you coming down, like, and they were saying, like, the Pocket Rocket. That was the name you had at the time, right? So we obviously didn't have a clue. Like, we thought the Pocket Rocket was obviously something about the fact, geez, this fella must be a live wire altogether. I only found out afterwards that the Pocket Rocket was due to your exploits as a snooker player.
No, that was years after, Tomás. Fuck yeah. No, Willie Hegarty, the local commentator here for Shannon's side, he'd start calling me the Pocket Rocket. Because, believe it or not, I could run when I was younger, Tomás. I was fast, like. Over about 10 yards. Ask Mike McCarthy. Mike will tell you.
Was Mike one of the best you came across, Frankie?
I wouldn't say he was one of the best, but, you know, he was sort of loose enough as well. He wasn't sort of in your face, sort of,
yeah.
You know.
There was no dirty stuff, like.
He could read the game, I thought. You know, he was... Like Mike, we played G 2 or 3 times, and I was always marking Mike, and I didn't mind marking him.
Yeah.
You know, but he was athletic, he was strong.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I thought he could read the game as well. You know, and like I try and give him a bit of jip in matches, and sure he'd never open his mouth. He used to drive me mad. You know what I mean?
I know him very well. He still wouldn't open his mouth to me.
Yeah, lovely fella. Actually, you got a box in that match before the game, did you?
What?
Did you get a slap before that match? Actually, by one of our wing forwards. He was a boxer. He told me that he says he wanted to lay down a marker before the game, and he knew he was going to be on you. And he says, I'm going to flatten O'Shea. And I said, the best of fucking luck to you trying to flatten that lad. He said he hit you a belt, and you just looked at him and laughed at him. And he says we knew we were then. He said we were then.
Oh, Jesus. I can barely remember that. Who was the filthiest man, Frankie? Because I know some fellas know who, and it's not. When we say filthiest man, I mean it in a kind of a complimentary kind of a way. Who was the filthiest guy who was a good footballer but could mix it both ways?
Well, I wouldn't say he was a good footballer, but Francie Bellew was a f***er to play against. He was a but like, believe it or not, Francie was fast enough over a few yards. You know what I mean? If he caught you, he'd hit you. He'd give you a fucking belt, like. But yeah, Francie definitely one of them. I know he slowed up in later years. Jeez, who else? I tell you,
he's a hero above an Armagh. You'd love to have him on your side, like.
Oh, every day of the week, Francie is the first man on the team sheet. You know. I stretchered him. I stretchered him one day up in Crossmaglen. He was fucking at me. He actually, the start of the game, I was in beside the goalpost, and he came in and he drove his knee into me thigh, so that he more or less gave me a dead leg. The umpire seen it, and I turned around and said, "You going to do anything about this?" And he just turned his back on me. I say he was afraid to put his fucking hand up. Yeah. So I said, "Fuck you," and he was Francie, and I says, "I'll get you back yet." So the game kept on and on and on, and it was only about a point or two in it near about 10 minutes to go, and Francie was right behind me neck, and he was blowing at my ear, and he was sort of hitting me in the back and the usual shite, and I said, fuck this. It says, right. So I looked around, and he was no one around, and I just I let back and straight knocked him to the ground. And I had a word with him when he was on the ground, you know, and sure, I was caught. The two umpires seen it, and the linesman seen it that side, and the linesman seen it that side. So I wasn't getting away with that one, but he deserved it.
Oh, yeah. Well, I suppose he probably wasn't complaining.
Huh? we left it on the pitch. That's the way we are. You know, I'd know Francie fairly well. Played against him at club level. You know, great fella, but sure, there was mad stuff going on back 15, 20 years ago.
That's
off the ball.
Beauty of, I think we learned it from home. Like anytime Paddy, we'd be hanging around with Paddy as young fellas, and he'd be meeting players from other counties and all over the country, and the crack he'd have, like. And sure, isn't that, like, I love it. I love the fact that you can, we did what we did. And the Tyrone fellas, I would have hated them. But I went on a trip to Australia in 2005 with them, and Christ, the soundest lads off the pitch you could ever meet. Kevin Hughes and Ryan McManaman, fellas who were hard bastards on the pitch, but Christ. After that, Frankie, you had fierce success with the club. Unbelievable success with the club. Can I ask you, like, winning with the club, and I know I'm not even going to compare it, winning that All-Ireland with the club, that was huge, was it? Obviously huge. Like, we only got one chance, half a chance ever. We have a small club, and we wouldn't have been winning county championships like you were. But despite all the county championships you had, the All-Ireland club was still a hard one to get, wasn't it?
Oh, so hard, Tomás. Like, you know yourself, I was at your game against Calder in 2004, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was at that game, and actually, I was just going to say Tomás Meehan. Yeah. Tomás Meehan marked Darrow that game that day, if I remember right. You know, he done such an unbelievable job, and I found him very hard to play against as well. He was really athletic, really strong. You know, I remember I was behind the goals in the Davin, and kick out. He used to keep hitting Dara's hand with the kickouts. I remember it so well. And Calder were mopping up the ball, breaking ball, and you know, Michael Meehan was flying at that day. You know, he was in great form. And like, to get to that level, Tomás, is an achievement in itself.
Oh, it's huge.
You know, even for a small club like yourself.
Yeah, they got some matchups right. I was flying it that year, and they had a man on me that day. I didn't get a kick of the ball, like, and looking back at it, I was saying, what did I expect? They had their homework done, but we weren't going to get back. When you went there, you got there in 2011, Frankie, didn't you?
Yeah.
Did you think
11? Yeah, against Cross.
Did you think then, geez, that's the chance gone, or did you think going down the road? Like, because when we went down the road, we thought, okay, we'll never get back up here. Did you think the chance was gone then?
I wouldn't say we thought it was gone, Tomás, because like we had a big panel back then, and there was still a conveyor belt coming with young lads under 21s and that coming through. Like, that was a game that we went in very raw into that game, and like, we played into Crossmaglen's hand. We didn't play great football, and like, we only lost the game by a goal. Like, I think it was 2-11 to 1-11 or something on that scoreline. Not playing well against a brilliant Crossmaglen team. A little bit of streetwise stuff won it for Crossmaglen. Simple stuff, Tomás. You know. And like, the following year, then 2012, we lost to Gary Castle in the All-Ireland semi-final. Desi and Gary, James, Alan Fox, all the cousins were playing on that. So when we lost that game, I definitely thought our chance was gone after that year. You know, that was a killer altogether. Like they're only 10 minutes in the road from our own pitch, the boys in Gary Castle. And then when Liam and Kevin and Benny came in then in 2013, it sort of brought a little bit more life to it. And Liam McHale's training was brilliant. You know what I mean? And
they were good.
He kept it very interesting.
Kevin, as a manager, like, did you need that kind of change to kind of bring it to another level then?
Yeah. Like, Tomás, there was a lot of brilliant work done in the years leading up to that.
Yeah.
There was, you know, some likes of Noel O'Brien, Owen O'Donnell from Galway, who won a club with Salt Hill, you know, Anthony Cunningham before that. You know, there was a lot of really good managers there that done a lot of really, really good work. Benny O'Brien was there. And then when Kevin came in and Liam and Benny came in as a selector with him, you know, a lot of the dogged work was done, Tomás. It was just a matter of tidying up little bits and pieces, you know, and that's all it was. Simple stuff, Tomás. It wasn't rocket science. You know, there was no meetings for hours and hours and video analysis. Most of our work was done out on the football pitch through Liam's coaching. And, you know, Liam McHale deserves all the credit he can get. Like, they were a brilliant management team, the way they worked together. Like, Kevin couldn't do what Liam could do, but Liam couldn't do what Kevin could do. You know, Benny was there as well in the middle of it all. So, like, it was so enjoyable. And it wasn't, like, we struggled at times in Roscommon. People might say, Jesus, you won this, you won that. We did, but, like, we didn't win every game handily. You know, there was one or two games that, the county final went down to the wire. You know, and we were very lucky. in that game. I got a goal near the end of the game and we won it by a point. I don't know what we won it by, but like it wasn't plain sailing, you know. Then we got into when we got into the kind of club, Tomás, that's when we really opened our wings. That's when we really, you know, players stepped up another level. They were able to do it. For some reason, don't ask me, they were able to step it up another level. And we bet Ballahadreen in the county or in the kind of final by a good few points. And that set us up nicely then for another crack across McGlen. And that was probably the most enjoyable game that I ever played in, the All-Ireland semi-final against them, you know. It was payback. It was payback. And like that game at Everton, Tomás, the quality of football wasn't overly great, but, you know, it was so intense. You know, the mouth and the belting off the ball, the stuff off the ball was savage. And I loved that. I loved it, you know, and we won that game. We should have won that game by 6 or 7 points at the end, like a couple of stupid wides with lads. And like we were the better team. And, you know, that set us up then for a crack at Ballymun. Like that Ballymun team were littered with county footballers.
Yeah.
Fucking littered. Like to give, I can't remember exactly, but to give Dr. Crokes a bit of a belt and did they in the semi-final.
Yeah.
Like, I can't remember the score.
They had the who's who of Dublin. The best players Dublin had at the time as well, like Rock and McCarthy and McMahon, all of those lads, like.
They had and the still have a lot of that, the core of that team playing, even last year, winning the county final last year. The Smalls are after coming through. John Small came on as a sub that day against us. He was probably only a young lad, but like that game. Do you know, if people were looking at matches, go and look at that 2013 club final. It was up and down and up and down, and like the amount of mistakes that was made, Tomás, was unbelievable looking back on it. But that sort of made it more exciting. You know, the pitch was in shit that day. The weather wasn't great. You know, it was slippy, it was slidey, you know. But like Tomás, it was just up and down, up and down. The tackling, the belting was brilliant. There was no mountain. It was a totally different game than the cross game. You know, players concentrated on the game.
Yeah.
And I say it was an easy game for the ref, Pádraig Hughes, the ref. Like, we never got a free inside the 45, that game.
Christ, yeah.
No, we everything we scored was from play that day. We never got a free.
I remember watching it on television. There was a gang of us watching it, and we were saying it was a fantastic match. But those club games, geez, Frankie, the club games are brilliant. Like, I can't imagine Kevin McStay going nuts, but I presume he made up for that afterwards.
Yeah, we had a great crowd. McStay actually got lost he got lost coming. He was up in the suite in the first half having his fucking prawn sandwiches and fucking whatever else he was drinking. But he got lost coming down, Tomás, in the lift. Now, you know yourself, it's easy to get lost in them lifts in Croke Park up in the suite.
They're very complicated.
Huh?
They're very complicated, the lift system in Croke Park.
Jeez, don't talk to me about them. But they are when you're going doing a match, if you're in the hotel beforehand having a jar or two, but if you're doing a bit of commentary on the radio. But like Kevin came in there with about, the bell was just rang. Like, I followed Michael into the dressing room or into the jacks before anything happened. I said to Carmania, I says, "Where's Michael?" Like, I knew myself, like, we needed Garvin Dolan on the pitch. Like, we were being cleaned around the middle of the pitch. We needed a fella to come in, do a little bit of belting, shake up a few things. Breaking ball was killing us. And like, I kept looking at the sidelines. I said, "They're warming him up. What the fuck's going on?" I said, "He'd need him on." So I followed Liam in, like myself and Liam would be like that. And I followed him in, and Liam went into the jacks anyways, and he closed the door, and I gave it a boot in, and I opened the door, and I locked the door behind me. And I grabbed him, and I was looking up at him like that. Michael's about 6'4" or 5", and he's looking down at me. He could have killed me. I said, "Michael, will you get Garvin on the pitch?" I said, "Do whatever you want. Take off whoever the fuck you want." I said, "Get him on the fucking pitch, will you?" He goes, I know. I said, "You better fucking do it." So they got him on anyways, and to change the team up a bit. And like, Kevin came in just before the bell went off. And like, the players, like Tomás, you go back to responsibility, ownership. You know, that's what I like to put into teams. Like Carl Mannion, Marco Carl, and myself. Like, we chatted to the team at half time. We told lads, settle down, we're in the game, 4 or 5 points in it. You know, we just, next score. I said, these boys are fucking rattled. I says, we get a goal. It says, let's see the reaction, you know. And like, we got the goal. Mango got a brilliant goal. He fisted it in along the ground. And like, we took over that game in the second half. But like, it was still nip and tuck. And it went to the last kick of the game. And like, it was a brilliant way to win it, Tomás. You know, just the way, like, I looked up at the clock. And we turned over the ball. Niall Graham turned it over. I looked up. I said, we've about 15 seconds here to get the ball up the pitch. There's only a minute injury time. And there should have been probably another minute or two. But next thing came to me anyways, went over. I knew we won it, and it was to win it that way, like playing for the club for 22 years, it was brilliant to win it that way at the end of the game. It was fantastic memories.
Huge. It's the biggest regret that I'd always say it. Like I'd always separate club from county. And it's hard to compare club and county, but Jesus, winning an All Ireland club is unreal. You spoke about Garvin there, and that little bit of divil, and I wish Kerry had that little bit of a bit of a divil where you have fellas who do a certain thing, and I suppose nowadays it's not that you don't get caught, but do it cleverly. Garvin, I heard a massive one. Was he sent off at some club level, and did he moon the stand?
Oh Jesus! Fuck, I don't know. He could have.
I don't know. Maybe it didn't happen. I don't know if it's true or not, but I just want to believe it is.
Well, I'd say it's probably true, but it's either Garvin Dolan or Jimmy Nail, one or the other. Jimmy Nail is the man to save Tommy Carr's job in 2003 when we got a goal against Leitrim, the last kick of the game. So I'd say it could have been Garvin actually. I think it could have been against Clonagale actually. Could have been.
Do you know what, Frankie? You could talk about the old days. Like Ballymahon, I've been lucky enough to win a county in Kerry and in Cork, and I had great days with Nemo. I thought I was finished. I thought I was gone, and the boys were chatting away, and they said, "You have something to offer, blah, blah, and come in." I had a couple of good seasons with them and great crack. But it was Desi's dad, wasn't it, that was over in Longford, and you went over there for a year, was it? And you won the county over there, didn't you?
Yeah, I went for 2, Tom.
2, Jesus Christ. And you probably got a kick out of it, enjoyed it, like it was...
Oh, jeez, I loved it, Tomás. I loved it. Like, I had a fallout with the club, and it was over something fucking stupid.
Yeah.
We came back from holidays, blah, blah, blah. They told the three lads that went, we'll give you a weekend away whenever you wanted as a thank you for coming back. We missed 5 days in the Canaries, so came back anyways, and we lost the game to replay by a point. And long story short, that didn't come through. So I said, lads, I'm off. And the other 2 lads didn't play. One lad packed it in completely, and the other lad, Jimmy Nail, didn't play for a number of years. So it was something small like that. But I said, right, I'm going to Ballyman, and I went working over in Tullamore, and it was the best thing I ever done. I loved it, and it toughened me up, Tomás. Like Longford club football, Jesus Christ Almighty! Talk about referees back then. You might as well not have a referee in the pitch. But I loved it. We won the county final, the first time they ever won it, and we won the league. So we done the double, which was unbelievable achievement for them. And then we got to the county final the next year, and we drew the first game to Clongish, the Bardens. You'd know the Bardens well, Paul, Enda.
Yeah.
And we lost the replay. But like we had like great memories there, and like still be in contact with a good few of the lads back from like that's nearly 18, 19 years ago. So there's we had a great, really good, solid group of lads back then. You know what I mean? And there were, me joining them probably just pushed them over the line. They just needed a forward to get over the line, and like we had a very good team. We drew with Rathnew, we lost to Rathnew in the Leinster club. We held them scoreless in the second half to bet us by a point, and that was a bitter pill to take. You know what I mean? We were so close yet so far. You know what I mean, Tomás? You never know what might have happened if we got over the line there.
Jesus, Frankie, I'm conscious now that you're going golfing. I didn't want to be holding you up. I could stay talking to you all day. Before I let you go, you're after carrying out a book. I have it. It's just ridiculously busy at the time with football on and matches and whatever work going on at the moment. But I'm going to be reading it soon enough. You're going, like myself, I wrote a book. You're going to New York, and you're going to have a bit of a launch over in New York. You'll enjoy that one, no doubt. How's it going? Did you enjoy writing the book? It's probably, like, what I love about you is the straight honesty. You'll call it as it is. It doesn't have to be right. It doesn't have to be wrong. You'll call it as it is. 'Tis your own story. Did you enjoy the whole thing? You did? I
loved it, Tomás, yeah. Like, it was a thing that people were on to me for a few years to do one. And I said, lads, I have an notion of doing it. Like, yourself, you're doing you do an interview for a paper before a game. You're spilling the same shit the whole time. It's all bullshit. It's all dotting the I's, crossing the T's, So you write a book, as you have to let it all out there. And poor Dan that wrote the book, I say he's still scratching his head with some of the stuff that he's been told, Like the crack, he was more a shrink than any. I've said it before. He was nearly like a shrink to me, Tomás. Jesus Christ, I felt great after it, and it was all free therapy for me, But we had great crack, but what I loved about it, Tomás, is is reconnecting with lads from, say, the likes of, I'd have great connections in Galway, Dublin, few lads in Kerry, you know, just getting messages or phone calls, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Lads saying, "Jeez, we got the book and whatever, looking forward to reading it," and some lads loved it, and you know, and then getting around the county here in Roscommon in particular the last few weeks, and we had a launch in Kiltoom, and people came from all over the county, and a few lads from Galway, Decky Meehan came from Galway, and a few lads from Sligo, Leitrim, you know, Westmead, you know, meeting people like that. The lockdown has been a disaster for everyone, and like I'd be a social kind of a person. I love getting out, meeting people. And that was one reason that I wanted to try and have a launch, just to get to see people and have a bit of crack and talk to them. And looking forward to New York now in September. Kieran Keaveney, great Roscommon man, great Roscommon supporter. He's out there the last 20 plus years. So we're going to hook up with a few of the lads over there. Sure, whether we sell a book or not, sure, we won't really mind. But sure, we'll have good old crack out there anyway. We'll bring a few books with me. We'll see how we get on.
The book is irrelevant out there.
Is really,
what was I going to say? I can't leave you go without fucking drawing down. I know it is the snooker club or whatever. I actually was on a bus one day coming on from a stag years ago, and we all ended up naked on the bus, like, you know, and it was just a bit of crack or whatever, like, and forget about everything after. I'd say you had unbelievable crack while it was actually happening. And I know it's childish and it made newspapers for all the wrong reason. But I'd say to be right smack bang in the middle of it, Frankie, the madness that'd be there, it was fucking funny. You were lucky there was no fucking spoke about social media back then.
Yeah, there was no mobile phones really back then. I don't know where the mobile phones were. They're like the blocks of turf. Well, I suppose that's what we had. But the crack was mighty, Tomás. You know, like, and it was harmless. Like Tomás, no more than yourself and lads that played football over the years. Like, I've seen stuff that went on. Like, if it got out there, lads, it'd end up in the slammer. Never mind on the newspapers. But like, the crack was mighty, and like, it was just like, it was. Like the paper, just your man in the hotel wanted to make a quick buck for himself, so that was fair enough. But like, I suppose the crack was brilliant at the time, but the fall back then was tough to deal with.
Yeah.
Like, I'm totally old school. I keep things wrapped inside my head the whole time. There'd be stuff going around my head a million miles an hour after that, and you know, the worst thing I done was not talk to anybody. Like, in fairness to Caroline, my wife, she told me to go chat to a person a good few years after that. And like, that's when sort of opened up my mind just to speak, you know, if you're not feeling right or you think something isn't right in your head or whatever, and that goes for anybody, you know, just talk. It's no harm in saying something to the person. It might help or it mightn't help, but I found it brilliant. It got it off my chest, you know, all that shit off my chest. I had to go to Australia, Tomás, to fucking get away from it, believe it or not. Like, I went for nearly 3 months because I was working on the road for the boys in Tullamore. And sure, every shop or supermarket you go into, all the boys be here. Here's the snooker player. Here's the pool player. You know what I mean? And I wasn't a footballer. I was a fucking pool player back then. You know, I remember taking a penalty against Galway in 2002, that year in the fucking Connacht Championship. And I was brought on as a sub. I was coming back from a hamstring injury. And I'll never forget, I ran onto pitch. I was only on pitch a few minutes, and I was a penalty taker and got a penalty anyways. And Alan Kane was in goal. Alan Kane's about 6'4", and he put out his arms like that in goal. And I said, "Oh, Jesus Christ, what am I going to do here?" But just before I picked up the ball, you could see the boys behind the goal. The man, Ronnie O'Sullivan. They kept roaring, Ronnie O'Sullivan. I says, "I'll fucking show ye boys." So, done me set up, bang, fucking kick, buried it. It was sailing right into I never forget, sailing right into the top corner, right-hand corner. And next thing, the ball just lifted. There's a little bit of a terrace behind that to hide. I knew it so well, Tomás. And if there's any breeze at all, it goes over that, the ball lifted. Well, the fucking ball lifted. I was disgusted. But the ball hit the scoreboard that's still there behind the goal. And my sister was going out with a fella at the time. It hit the bottom of the scoreboard. It came down and hit him on the back of the head, and it broke his 2 front teeth. To make matters worse.
Oh, for God's sake.
Oh, that's what I remember about that.
Oh, stop.
But like, I'm all over that, Tomás, now. I'm over that shit, you know.
Yeah.
I took it hard after it, you know. I got out of the country. The best thing I done was got out, came back, started afresh. And like, I started afresh really in 2003. And after that, then I never looked back. I just didn't give a shit about it. I moved on with life, you know, and you'd always still have lads coming up to you talking about it. And I just laugh about it now, and
I know, yeah.
I don't care, you know, but people need to realise as well, like, especially with social media nowadays with young lads, like, you know, social media is a bad place most of the time. And like, unless you're able to cope with it, you know what I mean? Like, it's, people need to be mindful of young lads nowadays, especially playing soccer and inter-county level. Most lads see the shit that's going on, that's being put up, and there's no need for it, really. You know what I mean? Just, there's no need. Lads are trying their best, and, you know, life is too short to be, like, 99% of the stuff is negative on social media. You very rarely see positive comments or positive talk about whatever, players or whatever. It's all people trying to run people down, which is why I wouldn't be on social media an awful lot. You know what I mean, Tomás?
Yeah, well said, because I totally agree with you. Geez, when you look back on what you did, and then, geez, what was the harm in it? Like, you were inside doing whatever, and you wouldn't even think of it. I'd look at it, and I just thought of, like, that's typical of what would have been happening with groups and teams and all that. That tends to happen every now and again, but it's actually harmless fun. It mightn't look it with the way it's when it goes into newspaper. You never think then of how that, if you have to go to work and it freaking affects you that way and all that, and it's not nice. Frankie, look, I'm going to leave it at that, boy. It was brilliant. I could keep talking to you all day, boy. I've great time for you in terms of what you've achieved on the pitch and off the pitch and your honesty and all that. Best of luck with the book. Best of luck with the round of golf. Tell Francie I was asking for him. And I'd like to thank you for coming on Comhrá Le Tomás in association with EIRGRID, and the very best of luck in the future, and enjoy New York. Thanks, Frankie.
Man, Tom, thanks a million. Great to talk to you, buddy.
Thanks again to our sponsor, EIRGRID, proud supporters of the EIRGRID Under-20 All-Ireland Football Championship and leaders in Ireland's pursuit of a cleaner energy future. Don't forget to follow, subscribe and review. Go to Mila Mahagav.